Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, whether it's your first time or you've been with us before, I welcome you to another episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. It always gives us tremendous pleasure to welcome you and to share life-changing business education and to share something inspirational on this podcast. So you're more than welcome, and please watch till the end. But more importantly, before we start, would you just hit that subscribe button? We really, really appreciate your support. Let me welcome my guest. My guest is Lekgowe, and I'm so thrilled that you could make it, sir. And would you care to just take a moment to tell the viewer who you are and share, your summarized CV, as it were?
Thank you, Mogobe, for the opportunity to be on Nuggets of Wisdom. I'm Oteng Mogorosi Lekgowe. I hail from Kopong, but originally we come from Trokweng, My mother and my father are from Trokweng. I grew up in Kopondo, which is in Kweneng East. Yeah. I have graduated with a degree from University of Botswana, Geology, and I've also done my master's in Hydro-geology, which is basically groundwater. And the reason for that is that water is very important in the country, and I was looking for a community where at any given time I will be needed. So
you chose well.
Yep. Thank you.
And some people may not even know what geology is all about as a profession. Would you give us a definition, a layman definition?
In simple terms, geology is made up of two words. One is geo, which is the earth or earth material, and the other word is logos, which refers to knowledge or knowledge of. So geology is knowledge of the earth. So geologists, what they do all day long, earth material is primarily rocks. If you see the soil, those are chippings from the rocks. So primarily we are looking at study of rocks as it is, which makes up the earth and other bodies like the moon, and other planetary structures. They are made up of more or less the same material. So that is geology. It extends to other extraterrestrial bodies.
Oh,
yeah.
All right. The fourth rock from the sun is the only one that we have. Do you ever go deeper enough to compare rock structures and to go a little bit outside our planet, or your focus is just on this so-called fourth rock from the sun, the Earth itself?
Focus is on Earth where we are, but obviously with curiosity, we've always been fascinated by extraterrestrial bodies. There's been movement to the moon, movement to the planet Mars, where samples have been collected. And actually, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk, who have made it possible to go there and back at a relatively cheaper price. Those are the works that I follow out of interest, but at the end of the day, we have to come down.
You just
back to Earth.
You have your feet firmly grounded on Mother Earth.
On Mother Earth.
Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about your career. You say you went to geology because you felt that water is needed and you will always be needed. What sort of training did it take to get into that? Somebody out there a youngster might be curious as to what it takes to become a geologist, to the point where you are now using it even as a source of livelihood?
Curiosity. I've always been curious. So what is very important for you to study geology, you have to have a curiosity and a pragmatic mind. Because you see, I have always felt after I have learned, I should then sit back and say, okay, how do I use what I have learned in the people around me and also in my life? And geology is actually an applied science. It's a very practical subject to solving everyday problems, I would say. So there are a lot of minerals around us, a lot of things that have a lot of questions. Case in point right now, we have cracks if you go to Hatalatladi. Those are some of the issues geologists grapple with. You look in the sky, you see stuff, the moon, and so on. Issues, what are those and what is their composition? Can we mine them? Can we exploit them? If you go here on Earth, we build beautiful structures on the planet Earth. What you need is, you don't want to be building structures that then collapse. So the understanding of the earth material is important there. And besides a whole list of minerals that are found on the planet Earth, we also have water, which is the most important substance for life. I mean, our bodies are almost entirely water, and if you look at sustenance of life, as well as life itself, you need water. So water is very, very important for a lot of things, some of which we don't even know. We know that we drink water to live, but we use water for a host of other activities, industrial, domestic, and the behavior of water is very unique in the sense that, for example, did you know that water is the only substance known to man whose solid form floats in the liquid form? And that is very critical for survival of life, especially marine life, because when the water cools, then the ice goes.
A big piece of ice can, even an iceberg, float.
Yes. Why that is important? It's important because then life can still survive below the frozen. Let's say you have a lake covered with ice. It will be covered on top, but at the bottom, it will be still liquid, so life can still be sustained.
Common sense would suggest that the fish should freeze, but they don't, even though it's very, very cold.
Yes. It's because water floats and form an insulating layer on top of the water body, ensuring that below the water is still sufficiently warm to maintain marine life.
We're going to talk about how you monetize your knowledge and your profession, but I think we need to just dig a little bit deeper into your background. I want you to share the entrepreneurial journey, your first job, how you gravitated eventually to I know that you've been involved in other businesses and other activities. Can you share a little bit on those?
Yeah. Before I come to geology, geologists, I believe, we are unsung heroes that we hold so much, and yet we are barely known. As an entrepreneur, I think it started way back at primary school. I used to sell seeds for profit a little, and then I also used to sell the common biscuits called Maquality. So I used to sell those as well. But even as early as university, I used to sell airtime. And that was a very profitable and very easy. So I had a group of customers in the university who knew that I was at UB, yeah. So $1,000 worth of airtime will go in a day or two. So I would make 150 out of that. That was my early days. But beyond that, I got employment with water surveys in the private sector, water surveys Botswana, and I was a hydrogeologist with them for 5 years, which was part of a bigger program because my intention was to work in the private sector 5 years, work for government 5 years, work for a mine or parastatal 5 years, and then set up my own. I believe to a large extent I've done that, and I actually wanted work for an international body before I go private, but the private came first. So this is where I am. I've the instinct, the natural inclination to entrepreneurship. As I grew, I've picked that throughout my life, and usually you start where you are. Now that I'm a geologist, what can I do around geology that could be of financial value to myself? And that's how I am here. It so happened, the commodity that I'm dealing with in a semi-arid country like Botswana, it's highly in demand. I think
mainly water.
Mainly water. I mean water. Yeah. The only challenge currently is that there are a lot of people who purport to be water experts, but in fact they are not. And we, I think that's
fly
why.
by night. You mean pretenders to this?
Yes, some deliberately out to get you, fly by night, or some not so intentionally. But I mean, if you have seen a doctor work, that doesn't make you a doctor. You need to be trained and know properly. So that is that. There is quite a demand. I think we are not supposed to be having a problem of unemployment in Botswana because the subject of mining, for example, is quite broad, and mining.
I'm going to dig deep into those aspects momentarily, but let's just go back. Share a few stories from your first 5 years. You talked of 5-5-5. The first 5 years, anything memorable there, and any major learnings that you can recall?
Yeah. In the first 5 years, that's where I was building myself. Like I said, geology, hydrogeology, these are very practical subjects. So that's why I was building myself up with an established company, like I said. And that gave
Which one is that?
Water Surveys Botswana.
Yeah.
That gave me access to learn what is hydrogeology, how does it work, how do you get to...
Is it just about finding water and digging a borehole?
It is more. There's more to it than that, because as a discipline, there are other disciplines that you work with. For example, we know of water as a resource, but water can also be a nuisance. So it's quite a broad application. There is the environmental aspect. How do you protect the water from contamination and pollution, and how do you also deal with pollution once it has happened? So there is the water supply aspect, there is the groundwater control aspect, and then there's the environmental aspect.
And all these things you learned during the first 5 years, but the one that I think I'm most curious about is divining for water and sniffing it out. What is involved? Is it a science? Is it an art? And what does it take for, one diviner is able to just pinpoint and get it right. Others will make you finish all your money running around looking for the spot to dig,
Yeah, there is both the science and the art to it. It's a science in the sense that you use established techniques. There's a method to it. The primary tool that we use is called geophysics. So geo, we have already explained.
Yes,
Physics, physical phenomena. And typically you are looking at electricity, you are looking at electromagnetism, you are looking at gravity, and so on. So what we do in exploration, we actually send some physical phenomena into the ground and see its behavior after interacting with the...
How do you send it? You dig? You dig, or you send in some electromagnetic in an invisible way?
No,
like magic?
We don't dig.
Because I've seen people, some of them come with sticks and some come with pieces of wire. And they say, it's for sure, it's here.
Yeah.
And we've had experience, we've had mixed results where sometimes they nail it, other times we've lost money.
I'll come to why you cannot be 100% sure. But for now, on the technique, some techniques are contact-based. You put pegs on the ground, and then allow them to send through that entry. You use that as the entry point. But some are remote. You send, for example, you can do sound, you could do send radiation. And that
using what instrument?
Radiometer.
No, there's a radiometer that you use,
Or you can store radiation, and then more or less, for example, typically like your X-rays is the same sort of phenomena where there is no direct contact, but you send rays, they interact and they come back.
How many meters or kilometers down can that go?
Usually we are looking at different techniques for different, for example, in terms of an earthquake, remember we can also use seismic waves to do that. If in case of seismic waves, it can span kilometers, but typically it's controlled and limited, so we're looking at hundreds of meters.
Okay.
And also, you also do that based on your understanding of the subsurface. In other words, if you know where your water is very deep, then you use a technique that will deal with that. If you know that your water is not very deep, then you use a technique that will deal with that depth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You obviously don't want to spill all your secrets, but is there a way in which you can tell if there's water just by looking at the vegetation or looking at the surface rock formation?
Yes, yes, there is, but it's very tricky. There are places where that is applicable, and there are places where it's not applicable, based on the subsurface. For example, if the fracture is shallow enough, you can have plants exploiting that, and you'll have lush green vegetation along a fracture, meaning that it is taking advantage of that water system. But if it is very, very deep, then that is not applicable. So yes, to some extent, and in some cases it's not applicable. I wanted to go back to the question, Ahore. Can we get it for sure?
Yes.
Yeah. The thing is, this is a very indirect. The techniques are very indirect. It's a very indirect way of getting information. So you may pick something. For example, if you are looking at conductivity, other minerals will also conduct. You have your clays, they can conduct. You have your metals, they can conduct. So there's never a surefire way to know. But it is not just that we are using these techniques. We also dig deep into what you already know about the area. So this is very important, because while we do the work at site, we also do it in the light of the regional context, and we can also associate
you
and relate.
obviously cannot guarantee 100%, but can you get to 70 or 80% mark?
It's a statistic. Mainly, well, look, you're not going to change the rock profile. So there are areas where you can even just say drill and almost guaranteed to get water. And there are places where it's very difficult. And based on that, there are places where when you get 5 cubic, you celebrate. But there are places where 5 cubic is very little. So at least what we boast of as a hydrogeologist, we is the knowledge of the area. And again, as you survey the first borehole, survey the third borehole, you get to have a signature of what the information that you gather mean. So in that case, as you do more boreholes, you get better.
Okay. Let me ask you about these people. I think I touched on it earlier, who use a piece of stick or a piece of metal. Sometimes it goes this way, sometimes it goes that way. Is this just abracadabra magic, or there's more to it than that?
Hey, it's very difficult to speak for them, because I really don't know. But I think if we go to the pre-technical times, we have people among our very own who have boreholes and who have like the Petse, who were known for these men know water. I think whereas we may not
in the traditional setup, yeah.
So whereas we may not quantify or subject what they do to science, I think it's also fair to appreciate that they know something. They know something that I don't want to dismiss them completely on the basis of the basis of the fact that I don't know what they are doing or I don't understand what they are doing. But to
my mind, this is comparable to Tobeja in some ways, because Tobeja works. I mean, I'm a beneficiary of Tobeja myself. So sometimes we can't dismiss these things.
Or usually when I talk about science, I'm always quick to say, if you look at the definition of science, is the study of matter. Is the study of matter. So if you relate it to the Bible, I think we scientists, we come after Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, where it says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So now we need matter. And I think that's to me, it's a very important thing, because then what is non-matter? We don't say it doesn't exist. No. It is just outside our realm. So that, I think, is a very good definition. But if you look at also from the Bible, if it's historical, in terms of historical context, if you look at John chapter 4, that piece of land and the borehole in it belonged to Jacob, who gave it to his son Joseph. And you could see that borehole was a very good borehole, because it had been there for years, and people knew we get water here.
Jacob's well.
Jacob's well.
I think it still exists.
Yeah.
Now it's called Rachel's well.
Yeah.
When I was in Israel, I was shown a place called Rachel's well, something like that.
So in my opinion, the guy who sited that borehole was a very good one. Was a good hydrogeologist.
Yes.
Because the borehole yielded water for years and years and years.
For centuries even.
Yeah, because it would sound to me like he nailed the discharge zone perfectly. Yeah.
Is this to say that if you study the earth itself, there's a whole area or a whole substrata of earth which is just pure water? And if so, is it large enough to be comparable to ocean type of water?
There are places called sedimentary basins. First of all, let's see. Water occurs in materials that have specific characteristics. They should be porous, meaning there should be interstitial spaces where water can be hosted. That's one. Two, having water is one, but the second phase is that the water must be sufficiently mobile to be extracted. Because if the water is not mobile, then you have a saturated zone. But
like an underground river.
But like an underground, say, we call them sedimentary basin because they represent basin in the sense that they can be within the basin or outside the basin. If you look at outside here, there is that depression. It's something like that, but on a larger scale.
Yeah.
On a larger scale, I mean across kilometers.
Okay.
For example, our major sedimentary basin is the Karoo supergroup. It's a collection of rocks or strata that has been classified and itemized in detail.
Okay.
So we know that we find water in specific type of rocks. Those are called aquifers.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned those 5 years, 555. At what point did you start, geoscience consulting? And what is geoscience consulting?
Geoscience is the whole spectrum of activities that deal with the earth, depending on what you want to focus on, because there are different types of geologists. For example, the economic geologist will focus on the economic value items that he finds on the rock. I pick a piece of rock my question is, does it hold water? Can it transmit water? Somebody picks the same rock, say a geotech engineer would say, but is this rock strong enough to hold structure? So that is the nature of our subject and our training. So the first 5 years from 2005 were with a consulting firm as an employee. The next 5 years were with government as an employee. I worked for the Geological Survey. And then the next 6 years, or this time I overstayed, I was with Debswana, the Debswana mine in...
Yes, the big giant.
Yeah, Orapal Takane mines.
Dealing with diamonds.
Dealing with diamond, the precious stone.
Yes.
Yeah. So it was after that I set up the Geoscience entity. And the whole point was to mirror mineral resource management, which is one of the departments mine outside, so that I could be of use to them and anybody else who might need such services besides the mines, because the application is quite broad. Like I said, it's for environmental, it's for groundwater, and it's for mineral exploration.
And when you talk about geoscience consulting in general, it could be any of these categories, but yours is specifically which one?
The vision was to be run. You see, hub. If you think of a hub of a bike,
Geohub,
is where the spokes radiate.
Yes.
And each one is different, but they radiate from here.
From the center.
That was the vision. So while I am a specialist in groundwater, my intention was to set up other departments that are headed by a specialist geologist who deals with exploration of minerals, and then another who deals with environmental issues, and then another who deals with geotech, but all of us under Geohub, so that we can offer complete service to the client.
So you are a hydrogeologist.
Yes.
Which means having to do with water.
Water, yes.
You also work with other geologists.
Yes.
Meaning that
who specialize in other areas.
In other areas.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Where do you think the big demand is for this economy or for this country? In terms of which of these really have the most urgent call?
The immediate need is in the water, as well as in exploration.
Yeah.
What I'm noticing currently...
Exploration for mineral.
Yeah, mineral exploration. What I'm noticing currently is we have got a lot of Botswana now who are applying for prospective licenses. And they don't know how to progress the license from PL to mining. And I think that is the space that Geohub will also want to participate in, so that you don't necessarily have to, because you don't necessarily have to sell. You could get the license and then progress it from PL, prospective license, to now where you have the mining rights, and then mining can start.
I'm just imagining someone who's interested in the area but is still wet behind the ears and has no clue. What sort of hand-holding would you do? What would you do to guide that person to get to a point where they are able to meaningfully benefit from the license?
What is important, and what I've also learned personally through the entrepreneurship, is that in most cases you need people. You need people. You can't do a lot by yourself. You may be a specialist in one field, and that's it. You need to interact with others. For example, my advice would be, if you are a geologist, fine, you are to a large extent covered. But if you are not a geologist, it's very important then to get a geologist involved and to work with you through that journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is this going to be a capital-intensive exercise for the startup, for whoever is coming up with a license, wanting to be taking through this?
It is, but I think with the full understanding, if you know the journey, it's easier to plan for the journey and know at what point, what will I need, who should come in at what stage. It is a capital intensive, and you also know when to go to the market for capitalization. I think that is key. There's a lot of in-house work, or there's a lot of preliminary work that you could do to get there. And then, so that also because investors are also not going to just buy any story. They need to be given something meaningful that they can put their money in.
Yeah.
Now,
yes, my question has to do with the different categories that require your skills. I wanted to deal with farming. From farming, I'm going to construction. From construction, I'm going to talk about mineral exploration, to sort of have a deeper dive into the issue.
Okay.
Farming, we've already touched on your role in terms of detecting water. What other activities does a hydrogeologist and a geologist assist the farmer on?
Okay, in terms of farming, primarily it's water. How do you find the water? How do we gauge the water? Because if most people want to start farming as a business, and to me that's a very important, it's a do or die. It's a deal breaker. If you have water, you are covered. If you have no water,
there's no farming.
You can just as well pack. So that is my area. Some farmers, I've advised farmers not to drill, simply because the information that was at my disposal told me almost guaranteed to hit a blank. And I think in that case, the money that you could plow into the borehole, you could use it for sourcing water elsewhere or other alternatives. And currently we are also exploring alternative to water, or water as the traditional source of water, which is drilling. There are what we call atmospheric water generators. Not very known and not very common, but they work on the principle of the compression of air. If you switch on your aircon, you get cold the other side, and then there's always water trickling. What atmospheric water generators do, they just optimize that. They optimize that now for water generation rather than cooling, and then using that very similar process. I think everywhere you see an aircon, you'll see water trickling. So that's on the environmental, on the saving the environment aspect of farming. And then the other advice on the environmental is where we advise farmers to position their infrastructure. Sometimes if you don't position your infrastructure well, you may get pollution, you may pollute your own water. So that also we tackle.
That's where you advise.
We advise. And then there are a lot of things that you could do around the borehole. For example, it's not just a matter of punching a hole and then having water. Part of it is designing the borehole to optimize your yield, as well as registering the borehole. Mostly the boreholes are locked by drillers, but remember, drillers specialize in drilling, and their key thing is to get the meters. So a hydrogeologist is also concerned about what you get as you go along and what it means. So it's well documented, and it's for use as a reference, because usually when there's a problem with the borehole, you don't know where to start because there is no information. So documenting that is very useful. And then I think in terms of the hydrogeology, that's what we do. We could advise based on the yield as to the specs of the pumps and so on, but our specialty is groundwater.
Okay. As a person, as a real estate investor, I'm very keen to learn more on the construction side. And somebody already hinted earlier when we were on Instagram that we should talk about construction and rock formation and strength of our rocks to withstand taking on multi-story buildings. So what can a hydrogeologist or a geologist do to assist in that construction process?
Okay, you've already zoomed in, but geology plays a very important role in the whole spectrum. For example, in terms of the material that you use for construction, and also where it is used, and also beyond construction, when you get into the kitchen, those kitchen tops, those are called dimension stones. They're kitchen tops because they're already in the kitchen. But the primary process you explore for that, look for the right rock, and then see if it can be cut, and so on. So there's a lot to it. Even beyond just the material, we also look at the quality of the material. For example, there's what is called medical geology, which actually checks the radiation from the material. Remember, during rock formation, everything is gathered, including radioactive material, may be concentrated. So you gauge the radiation from a rock. So not every rock, even if it has the right properties, is suitable, because then there could be those environmental consequences. So the hydrogeologist, the geologist, do a whole spectrum of work around that. And then what you are really talking about is now the issue of strength. Or can this kind of rock? So prior to,
can it withstand? Can it take on that weight or that?
Yeah,
force?
There are a lot of.
I think that issue is even more important in view of the recent earthquakes.
Exactly, I was going to say
Syria,
that.
there is the one that is topical, Syria and Turkey, where allegedly the construction companies are now being sued for not having taken care of these issues.
Yeah, in terms of Botswana, our position, we are sitting on a portion of the earth crust called the craton, which is fairly stable. It's not every day we get earthquakes. You know, if you talk about earthquakes, the earthquake of 19 so and so, the earthquake of this, so it means they are far apart. But having said that, in terms of earthquakes apart, where we are sitting, like I mentioned earlier, we are sitting on a stable part. This part, which is Gaborone and part of the greater Gaborone, is the Gaborone granite. It's a suite of rocks that are igneous, and we call them they are generally classified as the basement, and they are quite competitive.
What is igneous? What does that mean?
Okay, there are three types of rocks, and the word igneous technically means the rock is formed from melt. The rocks were formed from molten stuff, even if it's solid now.
Meaning there was a volcano.
Yes,
it's implied.
Meaning there was a volcano, or sometimes the volcano doesn't erupt. It doesn't erupt, but the material is brought close to the surface, and then over time, erosion removes the topsoil, and that material is we call those plutons. And we are actually sitting on a pluton.
Wow.
The Gaborone granite.
So we are fairly safe.
We are fairly safe.
The likelihood of an earthquake causing the devastation, if it comes, of that an earthquake of that magnitude, if it does come, is it likely to do the kind of damage we've seen in Syria or Turkey?
The extent of damage actually depends on the level of development. So that one cannot be ruled out. Earthquakes are by default very destructive because you are shaking the whole base where everything sits. So I cannot say otherwise. They are generally...
But if a design has been made to withstand them, because as a layman I'm thinking, when was the last time we heard of an earthquake in California? But when I was younger, they used to be more frequent. Maybe they've changed the way they build their buildings. You don't hear much about a devastating earthquake anymore.
Yeah, in anticipation of that, there are things that can be done, and that's a very specialized discipline, and I should be upfront to say that's not my area of specialty. But what I know in terms of the rock units here, we're sitting on the fairly stable portion of the earth called the craton. Here specifically it's called the Kapval craton.
Okay. The other area is geotechnical services, but I'm just for my own sake, for my own self, curious about what is it about our land that we have so many diamonds? What is it about our rock formations that has resulted us in contributing? Sometimes you hear 70% of the diamonds in a particular time, but we've been fortunate as a country to have so many diamonds. What is it geologically that you can tell me that has favored us?
Yeah, a lot of factors came into place. One of the factors in terms of administration is the fact that the landscape is fairly a desert and very, very unattractive. That meant it's difficult to follow the resources. So that's why it took so long for the minerals to be discovered. That's one. The second, because of the sand cover. The second one, I think, is just the natural endowment, in the sense that, or I would say as God dictated, because the global statistic is for every 600 kimberlites, one would be diamondiferous. But if you come to the Botswana scenario, which is related to the fact that we are on this special craton, the statistics change to 1 in every 10.
Wow!
So that's a
1 in every 10
kimberlites.
Ooh,
1
10%.
will be diamondiferous. Yeah. So that being the case, it boils down to the geology that I was talking about, where we are sitting on what is called the craton, which is apparently that's where sort of diamonds are preserved. Because if you look at the formation of diamonds again, it's a very complex thing. It's not like diamonds are formed in the kimberlite. No, the kimberlite delivers them. The kimberlite just carries them along as it erupts.
Because I read somewhere that this was originally coal that has literally just solidified over time.
Not necessarily. Yeah, in terms of composition, diamonds is carbon and coal is carbon. So actually that's how synthetic diamonds are made. You just put carbon and expose it to high pressure, high temperature. That's the formula. But otherwise,
those are Hong Kong diamonds.
Huh?
To me, those are Hong Kongs.
That's the artificial one. But the original ones, they are already formed at depth, and as the magma erupts, it just brings them along.
So, what does your company Geohub do in that space? What is your involvement? What activities are you currently working on or planning in that area?
Yeah. We want to develop a niche market, like I said, regarding the PLs or prospecting licenses. We want to be able to carry on work from PL issuance to pre-mining, just ready to mine. That whole spectrum of work, including the EIA. So remember, environmental part of it is also part of the there's the contribution from geoscience. I know it's quite broader and outside of the geoscience, but the EIA part, plus the exploratory exercise, doing all the measurements, doing all the project management work from PL to pre-mining, ready to mine. I think that's the space we want to go into.
Okay. There's a thing called geomatics. What's that?
Geomatics, I'm not sure. It could be just
surveying and geomatics.
Surveying. Okay, geomatics is about, okay, geologists find resources, and one thing about them is where. Okay, I found gold. The next question is where. I found a kimberlite pipe. Where? So geomatics is about that, as well as the next question after finding is how much. So then that will be dealing with volume, the shapes of the bodies of ore, and that will be used to feed into the development of model, because you need to know how much material you have at what yield. So geomatics is about estimating those volumes. It's about knowing with precision where things are, so that you know where to go for them. Yeah.
Am I to understand that most of the work you do is in the bush, really, and in the laboratory, and very little in the office? Give me an impression of the setup.
Yeah, a lot of work is done in the field, and it's about data collection. So you need to know. It usually involves engaging technicians under the supervision of a geologist in the field. So a geologist spend a good portion of his time in a tent, exploration geologist that is, and going out to the field, interacting with the field, the natural environment as it is. So when we go into an area, not only I know the village, but I also know the surrounding areas, because we go out into the field. So there will be usually a camp, and you go out every morning to collect data.
And there's someone there with a lab coat, isn't it? Also in the laboratory to measure and check.
Yes. These days there's a whole list of equipment that could be used on site, depending on what you are exploring for. For example, if it's gas, then you'll be use instruments to measure the volume of gas that's coming out from the rock. If it's water, then you look at the quality, look at the key parameters that you use to say, no, this water is good potable water, or it's not potable. So there's a whole lot of field equipment that we use. If it's exploration, then there's also the geophysical equipment I was talking about, what we use to send the physical phenomena into the soil and rocks to measure its interaction.
Okay, mineral resource integration. I think I know what it implies, but can you just break it down for us?
Yeah, in a geological setup, usually there will be different inputs from different people. But what you need is actually to be able to, one, have a repository for the information that you gather. That's one. Then it will be like a pot from which the information is put together to portray or to make it meaningful. For example, the geologist...
you interpret the information.
Yes, interpret. For example, using the geology logs, you can then put together a geological model. You can have a 3D picture of the subsurface or how it looks like. And then using inputs from the hydrogeologist, you can also know where the water strikes are, where the water was found, and also where the water levels are in the field, based on the information from different inputs, from the surveyor, from the hydrogeologist, from the geologist, from the geotech engineer. All of this can be put together to tell a story that is as close to reality as possible. Yeah.
There are instances where you have a farm and you discover that this farm is not ideal for agriculture because there's no water. But you go deeper, you might find that there are minerals or potentially there's coal.
Yeah.
If you find yourself in this situation, what do you do? I'm asking you this because I know that in Botswana, what's below the surface doesn't belong to you.
Yes.
The law, I think, says minerals that are even in the underground belong to the state and not to you. So, unlike in other countries. So, how do you deal with that? How do you address that?
Yeah. That's a good question, because actually there are a lot of things which are a lot of exploitable materials, and these can be found in farms, like you are saying. And there is a process that is outlined that can be used to exploit those, or if somebody else wants to exploit those, then there could be an arrangement where you are compensated and the person comes in to mine. Alternatively, if it is you, then you have to follow the exploration process. You have to follow the process.
You mean you are given
by the
sort of the
department.
right of first opportunity as the owner of the farm to explore that, provided you go through these protocols, these processes?
Yes, I think most of the time we don't know. People don't know. But I think there is a process whereby the owner of the farm can initiate that process and follow.
And become a miner, go from a farmer to a miner.
Department of Mines has got that. Has got the process mapped for
Let me
where
see
you
if
are
I understand
interested.
you. If you're in that position, you elect whether to now sell the farm or dispose of it, or to yourself explore the mineral.
Yes.
You have that option.
You could do that if you so desire.
Have you come across specific cases where that happens?
Yeah, it's a little tricky. It does not often, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done prior to actual mining. There's a lot of licensing. There's licensing going with that, and prior to licensing, there will be a lot of boxes to be ticked, including the development of EIA, environmental management plan, to demonstrate, okay, fine, you are a farmer and now you're going to go into mining. Mining does a lot of damage in this way. Those consequences are going to follow. How are you going to deal with them? Do you have a market for your product? Do you have all these things? Because now it has to be dealt with as a business, and there's a process for that, and I think that is the barrier to entry, because Borrell will want to be paid prior to your first time coming.
Is there such a thing as doing it at risk, where you get into a contingency arrangement with the farmer that, yes, when we do find an investor and when we do find someone who can explore, we will then get paid and have a share? Is there such a thing possible?
No. It is possible. Let me say it's possible, but we don't practice it, because then that will be the only that will be the only thing. And I mean, as a business, you need to survive, and there should be a bit of cash flow. So if we go for that, then it means you will have a lot of shares, but not real.
So, having traversed the length and breadth of this country, would you say that there are a lot of resources in terms of minerals that are unexplored for economic reasons, as you explain?
Yes, indeed. There is a lot that is unexplored, and also generally there's a lot of ignorance around Earth and what Earth can offer us. Because I'm saying this because clays, for example, that's a resource. Sand, that's a resource. Of course, it's exploited, and We know the environmental consequences. The state of our rivers is bad. But besides that, you could quarry. And we've got a number of copies that can be exploited, and we've got a number of in different parts of the country and other associated rocks. It's not just the granite. There are also other rocks that could be crushed for aggregates. There are a lot of other associated minerals about which we don't know. Hey. So if you talk about Botswana, you talk about diamonds, you talk about copper, nickel, and what else do you know? Maybe a little bit
coal.
about gold, and that's about it. Hey, and I can assure you, Jorge, those are not the only minerals by any chance. So we still have our nation is a very rich. It's a very rich land, but we don't know. A lot of sand, the Kalahari sand. I understand.
Yeah, but Lekgowe, I'm going to ask you to reveal what else is there underground. What other minerals are there that we're ignoring, either out of, as you said, ignorance or lack of resources?
I think, like I mentioned, the biggest challenge is that we do not have mountains or outcrops that shows those. So in order for you to start, then you have to go underground. You have to go beyond the sand cover, beyond the Kalahari sand cover.
So your impression is that there's a lot of undiscovered mineral wealth even under the sand.
Yeah, where we can't, which we don't see. Which we don't see.
But some of your instruments
like if you look at other metals, there are a lot of other metals that we could look at, but right now we know copper and nickel. What about iron ore? What about limestones? What about marbles? What about, you see?
Yeah, Tanzania has tanzanite. Maybe we have it.
Yeah,
who knows?
Yeah, true. So these are the things that we could systematically exploit in terms of the mineral wealth of
Should the government
nation.
be making resources available for entities such as yourself to just explore and discover these things for the greater good of the country?
It's a difficult one, but the truth of the matter is, yes, where there's a possibility and there's potential that could be sourced. Looking also at the fact that looking at the end product, because basically you don't want to be putting money where the money is not going to come back, but where there's proven potential for, okay, if this is started, it will lead to this. If there is a driver, which is a person with passion, with understanding, and who has a track record, or who can be tested, give him baby steps to say, okay, let me give you this, see what you can do. You can then prove over time. One of the biggest challenges that we have as a nation is that most of the exploration work is done by external parties, and usually they go away with the information. So that leaves us ignorant of our very own environment.
Are they not required to share that information?
Yeah, but the challenge is that they are required by law to do. But the honest truth is that if you, it's difficult to, for example, capacity, due to capacity constraint, that is not enforced, and it's not done the way it should, I believe.
I want to put an interesting question. As I was prepping for the show last night, doing a little bit of research, I came across a persistent story in the internet that there seems to be a crack developing from up north across the middle of Africa to the point where people are beginning to believe in the internet that Africa is going to split almost in the middle. And I thought to myself, the best person to answer this question and to settle this is my guest, yourself.
Yeah.
What do you say? Is there any truth to this?
From the basic geological understanding, the concept of plate tectonics, that possibility does exist. And the question of when and how much, because if you look at the...
Well, they were showing pictures of some cracks already. Somewhere in, was it up somewhere in North Sudan? I don't know whether it's...
Along the East Africa Rift
Uganda,
system.
somewhere.
East Africa Rift system.
Yes.
Yeah, such I have heard, but I really am not endowed enough to comment meaningfully on that, because really, but from my understanding of the basic geology, yes, that's very, very, very possible.
But is it not something that takes millions of years, generally, for continents to split?
That's the understanding from the geology perspective, but it will seem that there are already signs of that. In the right now, things that are suggested. The geological time is quite a broad time scale. It's a broad time scale spanning millions of years. But the truth of the matter is that as you go deep into the past, things get grey. we really don't know. But yes, that's because like I said, remember what I said initially when I say we study matter. Some of the things that we know or understand things to be today may shift tomorrow with the revelation of new and more recent knowledge and understanding. So that's another geologic time scale.
Okay, so the debate rages on. We don't know. It's not settled.
Exactly.
All right. I want us to talk about your entrepreneurial challenges. Obviously, we our viewers are entrepreneurs. Let's deal about the various challenges. I have three categories. One is people. The other is reliance on character and spiritual, and the third is personal motto. So I want you to take each one of them related to the challenges you've encountered.
Yeah, the people part deals with challenges, and then the second one, which is reliance, is just about the lessons learned, and then the last one is my aspiration. Like I said, when you talk about business, it's about taking a product first, a service to the people, and then who does that? People. So the most key thing about business is the team, because this is the team. Okay, the most important person is the king, who is the client, and before you get there, you need somebody to serve the king, and it is very difficult to get relevant talent, the right talent for the work. That is a key challenge in all my startups. That has been the big thing, because sometimes you work with a person, and then along the way you discover they don't share your vision, or they don't share your goals and aspirations. Sometimes people go into business to make money, and then you think, okay, this guy is a hydrogeologist or a geologist, let me bring him on board. Then you discover
make it practical. Is it something that's happened to you specifically? Yes.
Yeah. You have okay.
You don't mention names, but you tell us what has happened to you, sir.
Hey,
please. Yeah.
If you look at the delivery model, you'll deliver through employees. You need to get reliable employees. Typically, what happens with employees, they may start with you, but they have one foot in, the other foot out, looking for. They are here just for now, but they are looking elsewhere, and they go at the very first opportunity. That's a challenge. The other challenge is in terms of partnerships. Partnerships, when you have the right partners, they are good. But sometimes you have a partner who is looking at their interest and not your common interest, which is what matters in a business,
in an organization,
or in any organization. So that being the case, it means over time, these things get revealed by their actions, and you notice how then you drift apart. So after building together for a short while, you notice how you're not compatible and you fall apart. And that's how Geohub was born. The initial netline was a different name.
What would you say was the biggest setback or disappointment you suffered in the entrepreneurship space?
Yeah, that beginning with trust.
Anything specific? What happened?
The trust that get betrayed. Okay, my first entrepreneurship netline was in a hospitality setup, and what happened was, after I bought the entity as it is, thinking that okay, it's making money. But what I didn't do was the due diligence. Later discovered there's a lot that would have been red flags had I done the due diligence. And then by the time I realized, I was already in. And undoing things is a very difficult process. So the other thing is that after that, instead of the person still continuing to support the business, he wanted to have a stake, but silently. So he channeled people then wanting a share, even when he was not actively participating. So hey, it can be a very tricky one.
And he wasn't giving any expertise.
No. Sleeping just there.
But he had given the initial funding.
No.
Not even that.
No. He just said, okay, I'm about to return this to his owner. So if you're interested, then you can continue with it, and then I will just let the owner know.
So did you lose a lot of money there?
I did. A lot of money was lost, and
pride.
and yeah. But the thing is, the beautiful thing about such kehore, that's sort of a welcome to the entrepreneurship world, because then from there you get wiser. These people are your friends. They still care, but then you know what, before you do anything, you need to do due diligence.
But there's also a spiritual component to all of this. Can you share some of that?
Yeah. The thing is gut feel. Gut feel. Nobody gets taught entrepreneurship, to be honest. You could be taught economics. You could be taught this, but you don't get taught business. So I think the one thing that really builds you and extract the best from you is business, because you cannot afford to be stationary, and that means you have to go in now. You cannot turn to Mogobe because Mogobe is about real estate.
Yeah.
You cannot take to that one because they will be bringing their own story. Now it's you here having to survive. So you need to really dive deep into yourself.
Don't you have mentors?
I wish I had.
Uh-huh.
I wish I had.
Okay.
One, naturally, I talk to people a lot. Financially, I use Mr. Calvin Pukunzi. He is my mentor in terms of finances. But I don't have somebody I would call my mentor, and I wish I had.
Well, it's never too late to look for one. All right.
And
Let's
then
yeah.
And then on the personal motto, my personal motto is be happy. A lot of things around you will sort of go for you.
It reminded me of a song by Bobby McFerrin. Don't worry, be happy.
Be happy. Yeah. I know the song. Yeah. So it's very, very important to protect yourself, your space, your time, and ensure no matter what's happening, you are happy. Because you, first of all, you are the image of the business. You don't want you to be project.
So you have to work at being happy.
Yeah.
It's a job.
Exactly.
It's not automatic.
An inside job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I want us to talk about the crystal ball in terms of future prospects for both Geohub and yourself. If you're looking 5, 10, say 15 years, what can we expect during that time frame? What entity can we look forward to seeing?
The challenges we met so far help us to remold, redirect, adapt, and refocus. So, in the future Geohub will have expertise dealing with key problems around geoscience, in the area of groundwater, in the area of environment, in the area of geotech. We should be able to handle different sized projects. The other area where I really see us go is the contribution of our company in mining, especially pre-mining activities.
In terms of exploration.
In terms of
research.
exploration work and research and the necessary measurements that needs to be done to quantify resources.
So is the company going to double in size, quadruple in size? Is the company going to spread its footprint across Southern Africa? What's going to happen?
Yeah, the target is Botswana and beyond the borders. Our expertise actually have worked outside the country, where if we get an opportunity, we will go. This is we are actually at our very infancy, so I wouldn't be surprised if we grow many folds, several fold from the current size, because we just started up. We've just completed our business strategy as Geohub and its sister companies, and the plan is to implement that strategy according to Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3.
Okay.
Looking at the ops and then the future plans. So I'm looking at explosive growth in the not so distant future, especially that I believe generally Botswana don't know about these geoscience things. We just for example, in the villages they know surveyors, it's my surveyor, but they really don't know what they do and how they can help.
I'm sure
them.
you've educated them in this podcast.
Yeah.
Here's your chance to ask me a question if you have one.
Okay. In terms of what plans do you have for the expansion of the podcast or the setup exercise that you do?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I'm going to give you a letter in which I'm asking you to sponsor us. We're looking for sponsors. Since now we've reached 10,250 subscribers, we want to catapult ourselves to 100,000 and beyond, because we think that the message of entrepreneurship and the the evangelical messages around that, evangelia entrepreneurship, has to be spread through entrepreneurs themselves, sharing their stories, their war stories, showing their scars, showing how they've fallen, and sharing with others how they have recovered. I think the story this last 3 years has told me that the stories need to be told more, and it is our goal to continue to enthuse, to energize, to inspire, and to empower entrepreneurs. And we can only do so if we bring on partners. So we are looking for sponsors, and we are now speaking a bit more. We're more conscious about speaking engagement. If you notice that this year already we've been about 3 or 4 platforms where I personally was speaking, trying to promote the podcast to get it to greater and bigger heights. So that is the plan.
Okay. I'm also asking that from a perspective here, I think as geoscientists in general, we are used to our work, and we don't seem to sell
Well,
our...
you're the first geoscientist who's come on this podcast. Yes, you tend to be. I don't know whether you are naturally introverted, or you are just shy, or
I
what.
think we
but
naturally don't talk. Scientists,
yeah,
we don't
you
talk.
tend to keep to yourselves, but that should change.
Exactly.
One of my favorite people online is astrophysicist called Tyson. His full name is DeGracio
Quadiba.
Tyson.
Yeah, I know the guy.
He's a very, very interesting
An
guy.
a former employee at NASA High Level.
Yes, that could
yeah,
be
I
the
know
one.
him. Yeah,
And he's a very fascinating guy. So he speaks, he's
Yeah,
outspoken,
yeah.
he shares a lot,
Yeah.
and he's opened my mind on so many things. So we need more people like him and yourself.
yeah.
Maybe it's time now to be
To
more
open,
vocal.
yeah.
To open up.
Somebody was saying you should be the celebrity of your
Your profession.
Your profession. Yeah.
Okay, that camera says we conclude our conversation is for you to take a quick look there and leave the viewer with one final inspirational message
Yeah. Okay.
as we wrap up.
Like I said, the geologist is the less known part of things, but but what we can do, that story can change. Before you do anything that has a touch of geoscience, please contact the relevant persons. If it is a house you are going to build, check the soil, look at its ability to accommodate your house. You don't want a beautiful house to be cracking. If it is a borehole that you are going to drill, consider engaging the relevant expertise. You don't want to put a big investment like that in jeopardy by missing small steps like not engaging the geoscientist and so on. We can offer advice, and we could be on site for you during the course of the work. So that is a very important. I compare it to building a house. If you are building a house, you don't start off by saying, okay, I can do the architect's work. No. If it comes to the plans, you say, okay, I need an architect. So if you are going to drill a borehole, you need hydrogeological inputs, and Geohub is here to assist. Thank you.
Do you incidentally offer structural engineering services as well? If you need a structural engineer?
No.
Or you just have partnerships with others?
I do have partnerships with Geotech. I couldn't need because the Geotech link is on the earth.
Okay.
But structural, it means even on the main body.
Can you share all your contact details, including on social media and elsewhere?
Okay. I'm on Facebook. If you type Oteng Lekgowe, I'll pop up there, and you'll see the picture of the logo of Geohub appearing on my status. And then also my email address is geohub, ceo@geohub.co.bw. The other one is lekgowe.oteng@gmail.com. My cell phone number is 72633-424.
Also on WhatsApp, right?
On WhatsApp is a different number, 71402260. That's on WhatsApp. Yeah.
Okay. And physically, when people want to consult, where do they go? Where is the office?
We are in Main Mall, opposite blood transfusion. There's a brick red flat there. We are on floor number 2, unit number 9D.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You've done very well, sir. We appreciate what you've shared.
Error.
Okay.